Let me ask you something. If working more hours was the answer, why are there so many business owners exhausted, stuck, and still not making the money that they want? Because the truth is, most people don't have a motivation problem. They have an efficiency problem. And today I want to show you one simple rule, the 80-20 principle, that completely changed how I work, how I earn, and how I help other business owners do the same. So you've probably heard this before. 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. 20% of the customers generate 80% of your revenue. 20% of actions create 80% of the outcome. Now the rule isn't motivational, it's mathematical. And once you actually apply it, it becomes uncomfortable because it forces you to confront how much time you're wasting. Early in my sales career and working in different sales jobs over the past few years, I thought that success meant putting in a lot of effort to get a good result. More calls, more hours, more sales, more grinding, more hustling. Now at this point I was actually working up to 70 hours a week just to hit KPIs and go above and beyond because I wanted to make sure I was doing the best I could. I was doing calls from 7 a.m. and I was doing calls till 8 p.m. some days. Now on paper, I looked fully committed, but in reality, when you look at the amount of time that you're spending and how long you've been doing that for, it's a recipe straight for burnout. And there had to be something for me to do to not fall into that burnout cycle whilst maintaining that level of performance. So I started looking to see what I could find. And I was reading a book at the time, The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman, and it was almost like the universe was trying to tell me something, because the very next chapter that I was reading in his book was actually the Pareto's rule, which is the 80-20 rule. And that taught me the harsh lesson that a lot of the time that I was spending may actually be worthless and very ineffective. The next day I came in and my goal had changed completely. I was now highly focused on working smarter and not harder and calculating mathematically exactly where the 80% of my results was coming from. I analyzed what hours that I worked actually produced more sales, which calls specifically were closing, and the big one for me was actually when people are more than likely to buy and say yes to the product. And I will admit that what I found did shock me. Most of my sales actually came from a pretty small window in every single day, and there was two windows. There was one window just around lunchtime, and there was another window later in the afternoon when people finished work generally. Then over the next couple of weeks, I started to just refine that process, really make sure that those numbers were lining up, that all the sales were kind of coming in those hours, and that making calls predominantly in those hours was more effective than any other hours during the week. And over that time, I changed from doing about 70 hours a week down to 25 hours each week, and I was still generating the same amount of results. Same skill, same offer, just a different method. Now, something to actually take away from this, and probably more onto the title of this video, most people actually misunderstand the concept of lazy or easy ways to make money, especially with AI and social media and everything above. The thing is, it's actually not about doing nothing or doing less. It's about removing everything that doesn't actually move the needle. The laziest way to make money in 2026 is removing the noise from your day-to-day, understanding what's effective and what's not. Doing the right things only once instead of the wrong things repeatedly. It makes sense. It just takes a long time to realize. And if you don't have the right calculations or method to find this out, you'll be quite lost. Most business owners are busy all day, but they're not actually leveraging anything in particular to make them less busy. So here's a story actually. I worked with a personal trainer once, and fast forward, we did apply this rule, but I'll explain the story first. He had 23 clients, which is around 45 sessions a week, and he felt completely trapped by his schedule. He really wanted to reduce how many hours he was working to spend more time with his family and his kids, but he didn't want to sacrifice the income. Now, when we actually sat down and looked at his schedule, what we found was that there was a certain number of clients he was working with only doing one session a week. And the reason they were only doing one session a week was because they couldn't afford to do more. Now, there's nothing on them. They obviously have every right not to do more, and that's okay. But in terms of his circumstances, it wasn't working for him. He had 9 clients who were in that position, doing only one session a week, which made up 9 hours in his week. So one session, an hour, 45 sessions, 45 hours. 9 hours was actually spent doing one session with one client. Now, when he asked what's the solution after analyzing this to fix it, I told him you need to increase your pricing. Now, I'll explain why this is actually related to the 80-20 rule here in a moment, but you can probably put the two together already. Now, what happened was by increasing his prices, the 25 clients he was working with had to make a decision. We increased the prices by just 10%, so it wasn't a huge difference, but people who valued what he was doing stayed, and people who either couldn't afford it or didn't value it enough left. Now, when we increased his prices, one thing happened. He did lose 7 clients doing 1 session a week and 1 to 2 clients doing multiple sessions a week. For him, this changed nothing about his income. It actually increased his income by $150 a week, but it just reduced the amount of time he actually spent working. And it was exactly what he wanted. He started applying the 80-20 rule to basically every part of his business, structurally, to make sure that he was actually getting the most out of his week. Now, not everyone's going to do this, and here's why. Because cutting inefficiencies feels quite risky and it is quite hard to do. Raising prices is another thing and it feels scary. And letting go or doing not as much in a week feels like you're actually losing, or you feel guilty for not doing as much. But the thing is, staying busy is not the same as being profitable. This is exactly what we do inside the business personal training program. We don't add more tasks to your plate. We remove the wrong ones and we find out what you need to be focusing on more. We're analyzing where your money's actually coming from, where your time's being wasted, and how to restructure your business so it works for you. Now, if you want to optimize your business, instead of just surviving, if you want to work less without earning less, start by understanding the 20% of all your efforts create 80% of the outcome. There's a link below this video that will help you learn how to optimize your business properly by utilizing the 80-20 rule and a bunch of other strategies that'll allow you to work less and earn more in your business. Now, if you like this video, YouTube recommends this one will be a good fit for you next.